can't.
The Beast in the Cellar brings to the screen the chilling performances of two great ladies, Beryl Reid and Flora Robson.
I've got to tell them now, Joyce. You do understand, don't you? I've got to.
If you think it's best, Ellie.
Dare you go into the cellar and uncover its gruesome secret?
Welcome to That's Canon, where we talk about the Canon Film Library and other similar films. This is episode 3. First, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Phil.
And I'm Greg.
And holy crap, Greg, we were the only two last night to stream this film. And I got to tell you,
Last night?
it was so boring.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I think that was like in my little note sheet here, thinking of overall thoughts. And I think the first thing I've got my notes here is like, wow, how far downhill have we come from Joe? Like, we started on what is comparatively like a gem, and then we just come down to this already.
Yes.
It doesn't bode well.
It was a steep drop. If I had to give it like a one sentence pre-review, it would be, let's watch two old British ladies talk for 80 minutes.
Bicker and snipe at each other and reminisce about the good old days and how much of a beefcake their dad was back in the day.
Yes.
Yeesh.
It was.
You put the
It was
you hit
pretty
the nail on the
brutal.
head. Yeah.
So the movie is called The Beast in the Cellar, directed by and written by James Kelly, who really hasn't done much after The Beast in the Cellar, and I could probably see why. The movie opens up and it's like, it's not World War II. I thought it was, because you see all these British guys in these tanks.
Right.
And these tanks are essentially like one person inside the tank.
little like one guy tanks. Or I
With
mean, were they actually tank? I can't remember. Like, were they tanks or like they little like APCs or I don't remember.
Look, I remember they had a gun, and I remember that they.
Okay.
This was last night that I watched it, and I remember that they had a giant window in the front where I was like, you could just get shot right through there.
Bullets in my front window, my weak spot. No.
Yeah. How did you know?
How did you know?
It was so absurd. So it opens up and you see these tanks kind of going through the field, and then you see a British soldier. So everyone in this movie is British.
Mm-hmm. Fully British production.
Full British production.
At Pinewood Studios, I saw in the credits. They filmed at Pinewood Studios, which is surprising. Yeah.
I'm shocked that there is any studio set in this film. It looks like they just went out to the countryside and went, there's a house, there's the field. That's all we need, because that's all we're going to show. Oh,
you said a mouthful there. We spent a lot of time in that house, don't we? And the fields. It just like starts right away. I mean, we both watched on Amazon Prime, and we got like a quick title card of I guess this Digicom TV, like
Digicom TV
or whatever.
Yeah,
who I guess did like the film scan for it. I'm assuming they probably own the film archive that it came from. But like, and then it just we get that card, and then no credits. We just jump right into a bunch of dudes driving around the countryside in semi-armored vehicles.
And then it comes up to a guy. He's like by a car, and he's calling in like a repair or something. He's calling command, and he's like, This is car 7. I need something. But did you notice that the car number is actually 10?
I didn't. Was it actually like there's like a number painted on the side of the car or something?
There's a number on the front bumper, and it says 10. So I'm wondering why that's even there. But then the guy kind of walks away, and you hear the tone of The Beast in the Cellar. Anytime The Beast in the Cellar comes on, there's a distinctive tone.
Yeah, like a musical sting. Yep, like a low frequency kind of rumble, and yeah.
And then you hear the swipes of attack, and you see the guy kind of like make faces, and there's a little bit of blood.
A little bit, yeah, a little like candy apple red blood, which is classic for the time.
So I'm like, okay, this is setting it up. Friday the 13th did this, Hey, who are you? And then like the knife. So I'm kind of like, okay, this can't this can't possibly be bad. 5 minutes in, we're seeing some dude getting killed.
Right.
And then the opening,
First person POV.
yeah, and then the opening credits do show up, and it's just a
Finally.
blazing sun, orange background, 5 minutes of names.
Oh my gosh, this is a surprisingly long opening credit. Like that's what I thought. Like it starts off right away after that title card, and it's like, oh, are we not going to get credits? Oh, this is pretty low budget. And then, yeah, after that first kill, we get the super long credit scene, which, yeah, the weird like sunset. I guess. I mean, it's kind of nice, but like I couldn't read the font on it. Like the titles, I couldn't read what their job descriptions were.
So, and it's because of the orange background, the white text.
Mm-hmm.
There's no border around the text to give it like a definitive shape.
Contrast, yeah.
So I'm trying because I'm interested in seeing who the actors are to the names because I kind of want to read about them. But I can't. Yeah, I'm the same way as you. I cannot read a single thing this thing is saying. I didn't even see canon in the credits. The only reason that I assume this is a canon production is because it's in the Wikipedia, and it says, you know, the Canon Group Incorporated for US was probably the distributor for it. British Film was probably the people over in the UK who actually
produced
made
it. Yeah, I did. I was looking for it also, and I didn't see it. Usually, it I think in Joe it showed up in the ending credits. I didn't see it there either. Yeah,
kind of weird. So,
did we accidentally watch a non-canon film already?
Oh God.
Well, sorry, folks.
And it was a stinker. So after the credits, a woman is riding her bike. She screams.
Oh yeah, like a teenager. Yeah.
And the cops, the inspectors, because this is British, so they're inspectors. They're looking at the dead body. You don't get to see the dead body, but they get to see the dead body.
There's a whole lot in this movie about the actual like killings and the killer that we don't see. Like, I mean, I guess that's sort of part of the appeal, I guess, in these kind of movies, that you don't show a lot of it. But like this movie gives us nothing to go on apart from those weird like first person POV kills that are peppered throughout the movie.
Exactly. And the one thing about the inspectors is they're constantly talking about the state of the body, and they're going like, it's in pieces. Oh my God. Like
nothing.
when we take it away, like there's not that much to grab. And it even cuts to a fat cop and someone else, and they kind of go like, there's not a lot here. But what I found weird was that the two inspectors go, it looks like a cat, maybe a puma.
A puma. Yeah, the weird British pronunciation of puma. A what?
Yeah, or a leopard. Now, Greg, I am not a geographer, but I kind of know where animals live.
You heard it here first, folks. Phil kind of knows where animals live.
So animalcorner.org has listed out all the wild cats that live in England. How many wild cats do you think even lived in England?
If you had asked me before this movie, I would, and after actually, I would have said 0.
So you're not too far off. It's 1. The wild cat is Britain's only member of the cat family and bears a close resemblance to the domestic tabby cat. So the only wild cats that are in England are house cats.
It's Garfield. Garfield's out here killing people.
So I'm assuming these guys are going, something got out of a zoo
or something. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess. Like, what else? Like, what else? I mean, I think one of the characters actually said, like, a puma in Britain? Surely not. Like, even he's like throwing eyebrows up at the movie script. Like, come again?
So kind of weird. And there is no real animal that I could find in Britain that logically people would go, this is what caused it. It's not like there's a bear.
Yeah,
or
no
any
bears, right?
real like dangerous animal in that entire island that could do this. And then the two inspectors are going, is it human animal or animal?
You can tell they're trying to go for something like poignant there, and it just didn't land at all. It just sounded stupid.
Yeah, like I'm assuming they're going like, is this a Ted Bundy type killer,
Yeah.
or is it just a wild rabbit animal that caused
Hmm.
havoc? So you think you would see these characters a lot. You think you would see the inspectors
Right?
detect
It's like,
everything, but you'd be dead wrong.
no, yeah, you never see either of these two again at all, do you? I mean, I don't think
I don't
so.
I don't believe so. And I can't really talk to who they are because I don't know what their characters' name are. And there's not too many people in the IMDb, but
Hmm.
I'm assuming one of them, Superintendent Paddock, is played by T.P. McKenna,
TP McKenna.
and all he's done are British type shows and movies, things that we would never have seen
Like a
in our
character
entire
actor or
life.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is an actor in that scene, though, that is from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
No kidding.
And he is the butler of when Indiana Jones goes, "Do
Oh.
you have any
Any
tapestries?"
tapestries.
He's like, something like, "Then I am Mickey Mouse."
He's the German butler. Interesting.
Yeah. So there you go. Out of all those actors that we would never know, one of them is a butler
Had
in
a
Indiana Jones.
bit part in Indiana Jones. Well, good for him. He came a long way from what this in 1970 to an Indiana Jones movie in 1990 or 89 or whatever that was.
He's living off those residuals.
The residuals from Beast in the Cellar, of which there are many.
And then it cuts to this giant house. It's a huge
Yeah.
house, too. It is huge.
Oh yeah, big old manor.
And we meet Joyce, who is played by Flora Robson. Now, Flora Robson, again, this is the only film that we know her from. We would
Oh
never
yeah.
have seen anything else that she's done, but she has done pretty big roles, which is kind of interesting that she would schlep into something like this. She played the Queen of Hearts in an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, and apparently it's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so
So she
we
was
meet,
kind of a name when they hired her for this, or
yeah,
somewhat of a name, maybe for,
that
like for contemporaries.
if you saw the poster and we were British, we'd be like, "Oi, Flo is in that new movie. We should go see it."
Blimey, get
Uh,
me a ticket.
and I don't remember exactly what she's doing because she's kind of like walking around the house, but all of a sudden she dresses up in a
In a
military
uniform.
uniform.
Yeah, that was a super weird choice. And I mean, eventually it makes sense, but I mean, at first I was wondering, like, okay, is she like, is this her uniform? Like, it looks like it actually sort of fits her. It didn't look like she's swimming in it. It's like, okay, was she in the civilian service or something? Like, there's like medals all over it, and you can tell that, okay, no, this is like maybe her husband's or her dad's or someone else's uniform that she's like playing dress up in, which is super strange.
It is strange that the uniform fits her so well because usually military uniforms are kind of form fitting. So the
Hmm.
fact that it fit her perfectly
It did,
was
yeah.
kind of weird. And then she's told that someone has died.
Over the
I think it was
phone.
over the phone, so
Yep.
you don't really know who she's talking to. I guess the town is gossiping with each other, and they're like, "Hey, someone died over in a field, and it looks weird."
Oh gosh, there was like that little scene where she gets the phone call. I think she's still wearing the uniform at that point, where she answers the phone, and we don't hear what the person on the other end of the phone is on the other end of the line. We don't hear what they're saying, but you just see Joyce reacting to it, and you can tell like things are getting more dramatic because the camera will dolly in a little bit on every line.
Yes,
A what? Dolly in. He did what? Dolly in. Dead? Dalian. And it was like the hammiest looking camera movement that I've ever seen.
how do we show that she's getting scared? We'll push the camera in closer and closer and closer.
I mean, I
Uh,
half expected to hear just dun dun dun, like they shot it like a TV soap opera.
Same here. And if you told me that this was a TV production, I never would have doubted you. And then
Hmm.
all of a sudden, Ellie comes in. Ellie, who is played by Beryl Reed, another person who I don't think we've seen her
No,
in anything ever again.
didn't
But
recognize
she
it at
does
all.
seem to be kind of famous over in England. She's acted her entire life. She did TV and stuff like that. So she probably had a very fruitful career. You can tell that Ellie is lighthearted because she's picking flowers and random crap on her way into the house.
Yep, just kind of like plucking shit off the bushes, and when in a really extended kind of pan shot of her kind of walking through the field and into the, through the front yard and into the front door. It just goes on forever, which just seems to be the theme for the rest of this movie.
Yes, the music is very light. It's very airy. Ellie comes in and puts the groceries on a table, and Joyce loses her shit. Um,
Oh. I told you no groceries on the sitting room table.
okay, the sitting room table, and I'm wondering, like, um, if these things would like leave a ring or something like that. I can understand if it's a nice table, but they're just groceries. Who cares?
Groceries in a bag.
And I don't really know what a sitting room table is. I'm assuming the sitting room is the room in front of the front door that you like get
But
ready to go out
but
into
not
the
one that,
world.
yeah, like you put your stuff on it, which I would think the sitting room table would be for groceries when you come home, because you're not eating
Yeah,
on that table. It's where you put your keys and your coat and I don't know, whatever else old British ladies put on tables.
exactly. Uh, and then we get probably 5 minutes of these two characters sitting there
Oh my
talking to each
gosh.
other about nothing. And
Not a
I'm
thing.
trying to like really pay attention because I'm assuming this exposition that they're saying is somewhat crucial to the plot.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of Joyce and Ellie going back to each other. Ellie saying like you're bitter because you're old and you've never been married, and Ellie and Joyce is going like Ellie, you're just a stupid simpleton.
Oh
And
gosh, yeah,
you're
just like the constant sniping back and
yeah,
forth, and a little bit like they kind of throw a little bit of gossip in there too about, oh, so and so the grocer, he told me this horrible rumor about so and so running off with the grocer's wife, and it just goes on and on like that.
and one thing that gets brought up quite a few times in the film is Joyce constantly telling and reminding Ellie, "You're afraid of storms," and Ellie
A
going,
couple times,
"But
yeah.
only at night," as if and I kind of get it. Storms are scarier at night because at night it's dark.
Yeah, it's a horror movie, of
Um,
course.
so you're kind of just wondering, like, why the hell do they keep bringing this up? But out of all the exposition, just remember this is the most important part.
The only nugget of important information that we get in probably what 20 minutes of
Yes,
them just kind of like wandering around the house and making coffee and sandwiches and talking about the groceries and the gossip. That's the one nugget of important information that we get out of this entire thing.
so after a little bit of talking, Ellie starts talking about the guy who died as well, and she's talking with Joyce, and Joyce says something to the effect of, do you know the rank of the person who died? And Ellie goes, it's a private, which makes me happy. And
Wait,
Joyce,
what? Did I,
so
I must have missed that line. That's yikes.
because they have a friend who's a corporal.
Oh, he's the kind of the younger soldier guy who kind of he comes into that scene a little later on, probably
Yep.
shortly after the line you just mentioned. He kind of comes in and gives them the lowdown of what just happened.
Which is such a. I have a couple things to say about that, but
Yes.
I can kind of understand where they're coming from. At least Ellie. Ellie's happy that the person that they know didn't die, and they know he didn't die
Yeah.
because it was a private. But for Joyce to be really pissy about that, like, oh, you're only happy because it's someone that we know that didn't die. Well,
Happy.
wouldn't everyone be happy that oh, the person that I know didn't die? That makes me a little bit happier, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe happy is the wrong word. Relieved, maybe
Relieved.
would have been a
There
better
we
way to
go.
phrase it.
I would be relieved if someone went,
Yeah.
hey, someone in the military died today. And I was like, well, are they a staff sergeant? No. Okay,
Phew.
at least I know my friend is okay. Uh, but yeah, they kind of give her, Joyce gives her shit. And then Joyce eggs Ellie on to tell the story of how the guy died. And Ellie
Hmm.
has pretty much no information beyond someone died, right? And
Yep.
then Joyce finally leads on that she knew all along. She was just playing Ellie to get information out of it. Which,
Yeah,
how weird.
Yeah, it was a really weird, I mean, character choice, I guess, or like why would a real person do that unless these two sisters just really hate each other? Because I mean, we know the audience that she learned of this murder through the phone call that we got in the beginning of the movie, and she's just leading her sister on, like pretending, like making her sister feel bad for gossiping about something that she doesn't know the full picture about, and just like you said, like letting her kind of like make a fool out of herself when she's like, "Oh, I knew that all along. You're not giving me anything new." And you can like see that, see the sister die inside a little bit when seeing how her sister is treating her.
The only way that I would ever do that to someone would be if I assumed they were the killer, which so far Joyce has no reason to suspect Ellie as being the killer.
Oh no.
Mainly because she's like a 70-year-old woman. And their sisters, so they live with each other.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we didn't make that totally clear for everyone. I mean, everyone listening who hasn't seen the movie. These are two little old British ladies. They're the least imposing, intimidating figures you could possibly imagine. And we've spent, at this point in the movie, 25, like the first third of the movie, hearing them bicker with each other. But at no point do we actually suspect them seriously of anything
capable
nefarious.
Of doing anything.
Sure.
Yeah. The only way I would ever do that is to see if you spill something more than what the public knows. Like, oh, I think Greg killed someone. So, Greg,
dun, dun, dun.
What do you think they killed him with? And you're like, oh, a soldering iron.
I mean, if I had to guess, yeah.
Interesting. Why would he choose something so specific? So Ellie kind of gets pissy, understandably. Joyce is still rude for absolutely no reason. And then enter Corporal Alan Marlowe. Now, the only reason I know his name is because of Wikipedia. The guy is played by John Hamill, who was a bodybuilder before becoming an actor. And
really? I would not have suspected. He was buried in that uniform the whole movie.
Exactly. And he left acting actually a couple years after the movie, and he makes furniture.
He's like a carpenter or something. Okay, good for him.
So what I found very interesting when Corporal Marlowe shows up is he pretty much recites line for line, word for word, what the inspector said in the scene before.
Right.
He's like a puma, and that it's
there's that word again.
It was very, very weird. And he kind of like, you can tell that he's not an actor because he kind of walks into the scene and he goes, "Hello, ladies. There's been a murder." And then he says like the entire thing, kind of like a robot. Like he's just standing there, like someone pushed the button and he's like, "And then they died."
And you could tell. I mean, he had memorized that long speech about, a long bit of exposition about what, basically telling the audience again the entire first, 5 minutes of the movie where we saw someone get killed and the inspectors doing their thing. But yeah, you could tell it was almost as if he was reading off of cue cards or something. It was super monotonous. And
why is this young guy hanging out with two old ladies?
They never explain to that, and he keeps coming back. I mean, they comment on that a couple times later in the movie where he's, that young corporal, he's very fond of you two. So,
yeah,
it's a weird relationship. Yeah,
if they made it like, oh, it's Aunt Ellie and Aunt Joyce, and I'm just near their house. Okay, that's fine, but never would I just show up to some older lady's house and kind of just hang out.
Which is kind of what it seems like he's doing. I mean, they don't establish, like you said, any kind of like any family relationship or anything. He's the soldier boy who looks in on us from time to time. Maybe there's more to it that would make it sound plausible, but in this case, it just seems a weird mishmash of different character types.
Exactly. And they could have cleared it up with one statement, but we live in this weird world where young, attractive men hang out with two older ladies. So they have a discussion. He kind of goes over exactly everything that's been said. And that's a big issue with this film, is that every 10 minutes, they repeat the last 10 minutes.
It's very big on telling but not showing, the opposite of what you should be doing. We don't get any of this through like visual storytelling or visual language. We get barely any scenes with any characters other than these two little old ladies. So we don't see the point of view of other characters barely. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's just things happen, and then later on, another character will come in to tell the little old ladies what happened because they never leave their freaking house.
Exactly. So as quickly as Corporal Marlowe arrives, he leaves. I don't even remember why he leaves. I don't remember him saying anything. He's just gone.
The way he leaves, I actually wrote that down because I actually laughed out loud at the way he leaves. You know, he tells this story, and he actually goes into a lot of like grisly detail about, you know, the state of the body and how it was all mangled and it looks like it was an animal attack. Like really like scary details. And, oh yeah, we haven't caught him yet. We have no idea who did it. And then he just once he gets done, you know, relaying this horrible story of a murder that they have, you know, no motive, no suspects for, and he just says, "Well, I wouldn't worry, ladies. Okay, bye now." I mean, it's the most abrupt thing, and he's clearly leaving these two little old ladies, and you know, at this point in the movie, like I said, we don't suspect them of anything, so he just leaves them with all this horrible detail and the fact that they haven't caught this person, and then just pieces out, and you can tell the two old ladies are clearly looking nervous. I mean, for not the reasons we think, but it was just
Exactly.
hilariously abrupt way to exit that scene.
So, and then if I remember correctly, Joyce gets the military uniform again,
Mm-hmm.
and she's complaining about something about celery, like there wasn't any celery. So she gets the military uniform again, and then she goes out into the world's shittiest, like farm area that they have in their
Like a garden or
backyard.
something, yeah.
Ellie's like making tea, and then Joyce comes back, and then she like sneaks to the closet and hangs up the military uniform again. And then Ellie walks out and she's like, "Did you find any celery?" She's been gone for like 2 minutes. And Joyce is like, "No, everything out there sucks. I didn't find any celery."
Didn't look good.
And then they kind of start talking about their dad again, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they do. They
Which-
kind of transition from the, you know, the corporal leaves. We get more, dialogue of them chatting about what they're going to have for lunch and making the coffee and going out to the garden. And it's, you know, probably 5 minutes, it feels like, before they actually start saying things substantially again. Yeah, because they start reminiscing about their dad, who we kind of not really heard a lot about so far in the movie, and they kind of start reminiscing about him at this point.
And I'm assuming the picture of the guy in the military uniform is their dad. And
Right.
they just constantly comment on how handsome he is and how funny he was and how handsome he is.
In a kind of creepy way, right?
As if, they have some kind of like crush or some kind of higher love for their father than most people would.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of it starts off where it's like, our dad, he was such a handsome man in that uniform. They established, the portrait is of the dad in his World War I uniform. They established that he was, a soldier, and they say, he was so handsome in the uniform. Everyone in town, all the ladies liked him. But then they, Ellie, the younger, I assume the younger of the two sisters, starts, the way she describes it, like, oh, and everyone loved him. He was so handsome. Like the tone of her voice, the way she describes it, it definitely crosses a line into creepy territory.
Very.
No one thinks about their father that way.
No one. Maybe if you live out in the wilderness of England or you think that way, but no one in their right mind thinks of their father
Not
that
in
way.
posh British society.
Exactly. And then it cuts to a British soldier and a younger woman in a barn, and they're like making out.
Really hard cut. I mean,
Yeah.
Almost it feels like there were, again, to reiterate, we've spent probably the first third, like a half an hour of time with these two old ladies, and almost what felt like mid-sentence, we cut away to a completely different location that's not been established, to two characters who we've not met yet. And yeah, it's a guy and a girl, and they're sort of, in a barn, it looks like, and they're starting to, canoodle a little bit. They clearly, had run off to sort of, sneak a kiss or two in the barn and are rolling the hay. And I mean, knowing what we do in modern times about slasher films and horror films, you immediately know that these two nobody characters are clearly only here to be killed by the movie.
I love that you said canoodle. I just want you to know that. Very time appropriate. So they're in the barn, they're making out, and the girl a couple times goes like, "Do you hear that? What's that sound?" And again, they probably have nothing to worry about, but if I'm ever in a point where I'm in the woods and I go, "Did you hear that?" That's weird. I don't generally stick around. I go the exact opposite direction of the noise that's being made, right? You don't go like, oh,
No,
whatever.
yeah. Especially
So
if you're trying to hide, like if you're trying, like they clearly snuck away to hide whatever they're doing. And if you think you're being watched, why would you stick around in this creepy old barn? And
exactly. It could be her dad. And then the
oh
dad
yeah,
jumps out and he's like, I'm going to kill you, Private. Or,
just throw shove a shotgun in his face. We all
exactly.
know the scene.
So they start making out, and then you hear the sound of the beast in the cellar. And
We get the music cue right on schedule.
people start getting slashed. The woman is screaming. And I made a note here. There's an unidentified nipple.
Unidentified nipple.
And the reason I say that, Greg, is because we don't have a lot to talk about the film. So let's talk about this.
Talk about the nipple.
Yes, in a movie, if it's zoomed in enough and the nipple is unidentifiable between the man and the woman, what does the rating get? And a male
That's a good
nipple,
point.
you could get a G. That's fine.
Yeah,
but a female nipple,
at a swimming pool, he's got his shirt off. Sure.
yeah. I don't know.
And it was very, you're right. It was very, it was, I mean, through the whole attack, we get super quick cuts of maybe half a second from, a close up of someone's face looking terrified to a close up of some blood trickling down to a close of some clothes getting ripped. And yeah, we see this unidentified nipple for probably half a second. And yeah, we have no idea who it belongs to, but that's a good point. I mean,
you saw it for half a second. I rewound that and I paused it.
Phil's going line by line for frame by frame, doing a detailed analysis.
Because I'm thinking to myself, whose nipple is this? Does this
get to the bottom of this nipple?
Does this alter the rating of the film fundamentally? I can't tell who the nipple is. At the time, I have no idea whose nipple this is.
Oh yeah, me neither.
So
no clue.
And I forgot to bring up, before the attack, while they're canoodling, did you find it odd how long it took her underwear to come off?
They cut back to him sort of, awkwardly trying to get him off. And I feel like they used the same shot twice a couple times because they kept cutting back to like their faces, they're kissing in the hay, and then they keep cutting back to the shot of her skirt and him awkwardly trying to get her underpants off. And it's the same shot over and over again. He's making no progress whatsoever.
None. And I'm glad you brought up the shot. So these two are face to face kissing each other. But when they show the shot of her undoing his pants or him trying to get her underwear off, they are clearly laying on their backs, not next to each other. Like, it seems like the director, James Kelly, is going, I don't know how to make this shot work with how you guys are seated. So we'll just cut to essentially someone off screen. Yeah, roll over. We'll just start sliding your underwear down, but we'll continue as if it's the same scene.
That's a good point. Was the director just too lazy to move the lights in the camera to get the shot from the angle that it would actually make sense to how they were positioned? Or did he just say, I've already got locked down right here. Can you guys just roll over? And I like the idea that it's not even the original actors from the scene. Like, they forgot to shot some. The editor was looking at it later, was like, man, this scene's super boring. We need something else in here. We need some kind of like, some sexy shots of, people being disrobed. And they had to shoot it again later, and in reshoots, and it's like the director's hand doing the unbuckling of the pants.
They're like, Bob, we need an unidentified nipple. Get over here.
Get over here. Get that shirt off.
2 seconds of film. That's all we need. So the guy, they get attacked. Unidentified nipples and all, and
rip nipples.
Then, if I'm remembering and my notes are correct, it cuts to it cuts to a guy riding a bike, and then you hear the beast in the cellar thing, the swipes, the guy on the bike screaming. So there's 2 people dead now. There's 2 people dead that night to the beast in the cellar. Very, very weird, because they don't lead on who the beast in the cellar is. They don't show anything. And even at this point in a horror movie, you think you would see maybe the arm,
a hand, or like a close-up of an eye, kind of partially in shadow, some kind of dramatic glimpse to kind of keep you going, to keep you on the edge of your seat. But you're right, we get nothing through basically the entire movie, including all of these kills that you're supposed to be, ratcheting up the tension. And I mean, I think that like that brings me to like one of my big issues with this whole movie is there is zero tension because they're not establishing locations at all, so we have no idea where these people are. B, these are characters who we've not met and have nothing invested in, so we don't really care all that much as the audience if they're being stalked by this monster. But C, there's no kind of dramatic buildup to any of these attacks. It's just, okay, cut to someone on a bike or in a barn with their girlfriend, and half a second later, they are getting what looks like swiped to death by the cameraman, and then it's over. We get no tension, no buildup. I mean, it's totally not satisfying whatsoever from people like us who are really into horror movies, who know the tropes, and that you're supposed to build that stuff up, build the tension a little bit to the unknown killer, but we get none of that. It's just straight to an awkward kill, and then we're off the scene back to the old ladies.
Yep. And since we don't know the characters, I don't care that they're dying.
Mm-hmm.
Give me 5 minutes of that guy and the girl kind of getting to know each other, and then show them dying, and I might actually care. So then it's the next day. Joyce and Ellie are in their house, and they get word that more people have died.
Mm-hmm.
And Joyce, in particular, is the one who seems the most upset. And they finally go into the basement.
The basement dungeon that apparently all English people have.
Yes, and they have they bring food and a flashlight, and Joyce
or a torch.
A torch, yes. Let's use the Queen's English.
The lingo. There you go.
So they use the torch in this little hole that has like maybe 3 bricks wide, and they're shining it around into the dungeon of the cellar, and there's nothing in there. And I'm kind of like, am I supposed to even see anything? The camera's panning around pretty quick, and Ellie's like, "Oh,
Very
don't
awkward.
do that." He doesn't like the light. Steven doesn't like the light, which even with the torch off, there's windows.
Oh, it's
going
bright.
into
It's
the
like
cellar.
there's tons of daylight coming in. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not dark at all.
So Joyce and Ellie are like, "Oh my God, he got out." And then they go outside, and you see even more of their giant mansion. The grounds are huge.
Very big. Yeah. I mean, what do these people do? I mean, clearly they're living off of an inheritance or something, but it's this giant English manor, but it doesn't look like it's been kept up very well. Yeah, they go into the garden. It's all overgrown and kind of dingy.
It all looks like shit. You can definitely tell that 2 older women are trying to keep care of this giant mansion because it's all overgrown. And they finally go into another, like, I don't know, maybe that's where like the horses are. And there's a table, and they're like, "Oh my God, there's a hole. That's how we got out."
That's how we got out. Which at this point, I mean, for everyone listening, we have zero context for any of this at this point. Like we've just in the fraction of for a fraction of a minute have established that these little old ladies have a dungeon in their basement. Which, by the way, this is it actually things that start to get a little bit interesting at this point. And they're trying to rush out this revelation that these old ladies have been hiding something. Are they maybe connected to these murders? But they've established none of that at this point, up until this very scene, and they just kind of throw all this information at us.
Yeah, it's very quick, and that's how the information comes, extremely quick.
In quick bursts.
And then there's nothing. And so Joyce and Ellie go, "Let's move the table over the hole, and then that'll stop Steven from coming out." Now, remind me, Greg, Steven wasn't in the cellar, right?
No,
that's what prompted them to go out and look for the hole.
Yeah, which is I've noted that too, because they look at him, they try to like shine a flashlight in from the basement. They see that the room to us looks empty. You don't hear or see anything. It doesn't make it look like they saw or heard anything. So yeah, I don't think he's actually whoever Steven is at this point in the movie. Like we don't know who that is, and we definitely don't think he's in the basement. I mean, the way that they've shot it.
So by putting the table over the hole, they're not keeping Steven in, they're keeping him out.
They're absolutely keeping him out. Yep.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not lost here. And then Joyce falls down. She doesn't fall down in any extreme fashion. She doesn't fall because something hits her. She
Nope.
falls because she's old and they tried to move a table.
Yep, trying to move a table. Her hand slipped. She kind of like fell back on her butt. I mean, a very light little fall. I mean, barely anything.
It was so uneventful that I didn't even write it down until it became an event.
Until it became an event. Oh, yeah.
And if I'm being mean to old people, it's only because this movie makes old people seem almost incapable of doing anything.
They're all made of fragile glass.
Yes. So Joyce is like, Ellie, I need you to carry me back to the house. I'm hurt.
Good luck with that.
Ellie is not physically fit. She's a little rotund, but somehow they get Joyce back into the house, and Joyce is like sweating bullets. She is on, like, they're gonna bring the gun out and melt her into glue soon.
Like, seriously, they're taking her out to pasture. I mean, and the way that they like you said, like, she's all covered in sweat and she's on the couch, and the way she's talking, I mean, you'd think that she's on her deathbed. She's talking like, "Oh, I'm Joy. I don't know if I can make it." I mean, you fell.
Yeah,
a little bit.
So Ellie calls the doctor, and then she goes back outside and she's burying a victim. Do you remember that?
That's right. So I think that this whole part of the movie was kind of a jumble for me in my memory, because
it's not a jumble in your memory because it's actually a jumble.
It's a jumble in the movie too, as shot, as edited. Because I mean, they what's her name? The younger sister. She finds the body of the guy who got killed on the bike, right? That's that guy, right? He
His eyeball was popped out too, which was really cool.
Yeah,
but you only see it for half a second.
The only kind of neat horror movie gore effect that we get in the entire movie.
Yeah,
that's all. One eyeball. Come on, movie.
So Ellie is burying the body, and that's when you see another woman just kind of like walk around the grounds of their house. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, who the hell is this? They called the doctor. Who is this woman? And you think that she's going to walk up on Ellie burying the body, but no, she goes up, she finds Joyce, and she announces herself as the nurse Joanna Sutherland. And I'm very impressed that all of these characters have a first and last name. Nurse Sutherland is played by Tessa Wyatt, who, again, unsurprisingly, we never seen her in anything else ever again.
Did not look familiar at all, no.
And then Ellie comes in wearing like her pea coat, looking very proper but dirty, and she's like, I buried him.
And she's filthy. I mean, she's almost comically covered in dirt. What was she doing with that? Was she just like throwing dirt in her face, having a dirt party out there while she's burying the body? I mean, comically covered in soot and dirt on her face.
And the nurse is like, buried him? And then she's like, yeah, one of the hamsters, which earlier in the film, you see like a 2-second thing of these hamsters in a cage. That's
a really good point. I mean, they sort of, they clearly had the intent to maybe make that something where they try to establish that these women are keeping a bunch of small animals in cages in this weird kind of back room in their house. And I don't know if you noticed it, but a couple points throughout that movie up until this point, we hear like animals squealing in the background when we're in the house, but the characters don't comment on it. Earlier on, I heard it was like a pig squealing almost in the background when they were talking about making coffee and they were talking about the celery. And then later, after we, the young couple gets murdered in the barn, and then they come back, and then you hear sort of a cat kind of howling and meowing.
I do remember
in the background.
The cat part, yeah.
And and the audience, I mean, the characters comment it. They do not comment on it at all. And as the audience, you're left wondering, where is this coming from? And actually, there was a part in the movie when the cat was howling that I thought it was my cat at home. Like the way that the audio was mixed, it came through my headphones like it was in the room with me. It was the most surreal thing ever. And I had where is this sound coming? Where are these weird animal sounds coming from? And then only until this point do I realize that, the animals in those cages, they were, keeping them there. And then this is the first time that they actually finally comment on it. Oh, they're keeping animals. It was one of them that died. I had to go out and bury him.
That is so weird.
It was
I do
very
remember
strange.
a couple times the cats or animals making sound in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's a cut subplot of Ellie and Joyce slaughtering these animals to feed the beast in the cellar?
I have to assume that was the intent. And maybe they ran out of money and they couldn't shoot those scenes, but I feel like that was kind of essential because otherwise we're left with just strange sounds that the characters aren't acknowledging until this very scene. That would actually have been a kind of a cool, interesting thing to sort of, trickle into the plot up to this point where you kind of see them behaving strangely, like going into the basement with a thing of meat and coming out with an empty plate. Just sort of like little breadcrumbs to sort of lead you to this conclusion that they're keeping a monster in the basement. But we get none of that buildup, just weird, like disjointed sounds and references that make no sense until the inevitable exposition dumps at some point later. That's all we get.
So yeah, and it's very odd. The nurse is there, then in comes a doctor, Dr. Spencer, and he's essentially saying Joyce is bedridden. She will be spending the rest of the picture in the bed.
We're very sorry. Her agent has forbade her from standing for the rest of this film. She's bedridden from that tiny fall that she had in the back garden.
Exactly. And then the doctor's like, I am leaving. The nurse will stay. So we get, the rest of the night they kind of spend with each other. And the next day comes, the nurse is still there with Ellie and Joyce. And then comes back Corporal Marlowe, who just like walks right into the room. And the nurse is like, who the hell are you? And the corporal's like, who are you?
I could ask you the same question.
It seems like the nurse grew this giant rapport with Joyce and Ellie that she feels that she commands the house now.
More scenes that we maybe missed, days have passed and Joyce has deteriorated that we didn't see, her taking care of her.
But Corporal Marlowe now has a gun. And one of the characters, Ellie or Joyce, I think it was Ellie, goes, what are you doing with that thing? Corporal Marlowe is in the military. In the military, every once in a while, they do use guns.
They do use guns.
Especially when military personnel are being killed.
Yeah, exactly. If there's, killers on the loose, I mean, it makes sense in the as far as the plot in the movie goes, but actually I remember that now. I wonder, was that like a cultural thing? I mean, we're so in the States, we're so, we're a lot more desensitized to seeing firearms in everyday life. Is that maybe that would be more shocking to someone in the UK where they're, that it's a lot more tightly controlled? I mean, maybe that was the intent of her being so shocked by seeing a sidearm that's, well, obviously very safely holstered. And
yeah,
I mean, not like he was, brandishing it around like an idiot.
It's like, yeah, he came in waving around. He's like, there's a killer on the loose. And he's like, bang, bang. No, it's in a nice white holster. He's wearing it perfectly fine. And maybe it is a cultural thing because, I was in the military. You don't carry guns around a military base or anything like that, but it's not unaccustomed to see people with guns in the military.
It's not a shocking sight, especially for a soldier.
So Corporal Marlowe, all he's there to do is essentially go like, I've got a gun now because there's a killer on the loose. And then he just goes away.
He says to the camera, then leaves.
And then it seems the guilt is getting so bad to Ellie that she starts spilling the beans to Joyce and the nurse. She's like, oh, Dad was this handsome man before the war and he was so great. And then he got called up to World War II.
I thought it was World War One.
So he was in World War One. And so you are correct. She tells him that Stephen was born after the father's return to World War One.
That's right.
After he comes back from World War One, he's like shell shocked, which shell shock is PTSD. That's just what they called it back then. And and he started getting more violent towards Stephen. So after the parents died, Joyce and Ellie, Joyce primarily, and this is you are correct. Joyce was afraid that Stephen was going to go to World War II. So they devised a plan. Now, Stephen was a perfectly normal person. This is what was shocking, was that he was a perfectly normal, well-kept man.
Oh yeah, perfectly normal. He wasn't some kind of, that's where you sort of maybe get the idea that they had a younger brother who was born, between the wars, and he was this kind of grotesque, deformed character that had some reflection from the dad's horror that he saw in World War I, some kind of thematic thing about the character that makes him, we've got to hide him away and shut him up in the basement. But no, he's just a perfectly normal person who these sisters were terrified would go off to war and come back a shell of his former self after, just like their father. They were terrified of this. So yeah, they bricked him up in the basement.
And they did so by feeding him sleeping pills in his water. Now, Ellie calls the cops at some point. I don't remember when. I don't remember it actually happening. I think she just kind of announces it too. She's like, I have called the cops.
I've got to do something.
A lot of these actions are kind of like when Michael Scott declares bankruptcy and he just says it and he assumes that it happens.
And assumes something happens in the background to actually make it happen.
Because after this explanation of what they did to Stephen, all of a sudden you see like Dobermans and other dogs get scoured out across their house, and they find the hole, and the cops are kind of like walking all over the place. And then Ellie is telling a detective, a new separate detective from not the ones from the earlier in the film.
Yep, another new character who we've never met before. She thrust into the movie.
She's telling him the story, and the detective goes, so he's been down there for 30 years in solitary confinement. Now,
kept there by you against his will for 30 years.
Greg, what do you think is the world record for solitary confinement?
I'm going to guess like something significantly less than 30 years, maybe a year before someone totally loses their mind.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad that you think that people are that humane, because in 1972,
oh no,
for the killing of a prisoner correctional officer, Wallace and Woodfox served more than 40 years each in solitary confinement in the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And their confinement began in 1974, in case I didn't say that. So they spent 40 years in solitary.
So in 2014, they were still in solitary.
Yes. And one of them was actually released only because he got terminal liver cancer.
That can't be the only thing he got. I mean, if he spent 40 years in isolation, I can only imagine the mental state that he was in.
So, according to another article that I've read, just 15 days locked up in solitary can be enough to cause permanent psychological damage, with effects ranging from anxiety to paranoia to the inability to form coherent thoughts.
I mean that kind of jives with everything that I had anecdotally heard about spending time in isolation, like forced solitary confinement, is that you very quickly deteriorates your mental state to the point where you are babbling and have no concept of time, and like you said, unable to even speak. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would do to someone after years of that time.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so it kind of, watching the movie, seeing the 30 years, I kind of like didn't believe it at first. I'm like, 30 years? It would turn him into like a were person of sorts. But after doing a little research on the back end, it seems like 15 days can definitely have long-lasting effects on people. Extremely sad. But in this situation, it gets even, I guess, odder, because after this exposition, after all of this talking, a storm happens.
Remember
And
the Storm Kids?
Ellie gets so afraid, and she runs into her dying, sick sister's room. Joyce, she's laying there fucking sweating still, sweating like it's 1,000 degrees outside. And
Oh
Ellie's
yeah.
going, "It's a storm. Don't you remember? I'm afraid of storms at night."
Wink, wink to the
She,
camera.
and she even says that. That's not even exaggeration of dialogue. She announces that she's afraid of storms specifically at night.
At night.
And
Mhm.
then you hear the sounds of the beast in the cellar. And you see these fingers, like these horrible, like, in cereal, like you would get like the witch finger. And it's
Yeah.
just like this little rubber piece of crap. And it's like, I got a witch finger. It looks like he's wearing witch fingers.
Which they're actually like they're bugles.
Oh my
They put on
God.
his fingers, then do they spray painted them?
If he ate one, that'd have been great.
Mm.
And then he has like the giant mane of hair, and you see the sunken eyes, and he's kind of like skulking around the room. And then he like leaps for the attack, and then in walks the corporal, and bang, bang, bang. 'Cause as quick as he shows up, he unholsters that and shoots him.
That gun that they so cleverly announced,
Yes.
5 minutes ago.
At first, when you see it, you go, "This is Chekhov's gun." They're
Yep.
introducing the gun to come back at the end of the movie.
Well, that's going
But then
on.
the end of the movie came so quickly that I went, they're not going to use the gun. How are they going to kill this guy? Because there's no logical reason for the corporal ever to come back here. But he does, because
Somehow.
the movie wrote it that way. They shoot him dead. There's no monologue. There's no, "Let me hold my dying brother." Ellie somehow knows he wasn't going for Joyce. Oh, and this is the weird part, and this is
Mhm.
critical. Joyce is wearing the military uniform in bed, dying for some reason.
Also a very creepy choice.
And next to Joyce is a photo of the father. And somehow Ellie knew she was going for the photo of the father so he could like scratch it, because there's unbridled hate towards the father.
Which makes no sense to me. I mean, you'd think he
Exactly.
should be going after these sisters. They kept him cooped up. He should be, overcome with like revenge fantasy and anger at what these people. No, yeah. Oh, he was just going for the picture. He hated his dad. These two ladies who are totally beyond blame for all of this.
It makes no sense
None
that Stephen
whatsoever.
has no anger towards his sisters. None whatsoever. Stephen dies. Joyce and Ellie seemingly get off scot-free. Because
That's the weird part because I mean, even in this scene, also, he's not going to be attacking us, which is not the case. Weird point number one, but also when Ellie is recounting this grisly story of them capturing and confining their brother for 30 years, when she's telling this story to the police officer who came to the house, he just seems like totally unbothered by it, and they end up leaving them there. It's like, and he's asking all these questions about how he kept them there and how the drugging and everything, and he just does not seem to care that these ladies kept this guy confined for 30 years, and they just walk away. They don't arrest them, they don't question, they don't put them under house arrest or anything. They no one in this movie, once they realize what's been happening, seems to blame these sisters at all.
exactly. Even Joyce, I want to say the final line that she says was, "It was all done for him." As if the life that he led, being the beast in the cellar, was way better than going off to World War II.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but 30 years of psychological torture versus going to war, while World War II is absolutely horrible, living a life of suffering for decades, I think pales in comparison, maybe, to the horrors that he would have experienced in World War II. He psychologically devolved into a monster man.
Oh yeah, they that line you just mentioned. They throw out there like it's gonna it makes everything okay, and all the characters in the scene, they totally buy it, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, well you're right, yeah, it was all for his own good. Yep.
So weird. And then the movie ends. There's nothing else. The movie just ends.
there was one cool shot in that scene that I actually wanted to bring up that I noted. It was like the one bit of creative sort of visuals that they said, like where they actually we start to get glimpses of Stephen, the beast in the cellar, and we see his sort of, like you said, the deteriorated state. He's kind of animalistic. We see the claws, we see a close up of the eyes, and like the kind of grizzly bearded face, dirty. That was actually kind of cool, which I wish, like I said before, I wish they had kind of sprinkled some of those shots throughout the earlier part of the movie so we get a little bit of that, kind of horror factor. But then there's a really neat scene where he's kind of creeping up the stairs, and there's some lightning from the storm, and it kind of throws a silhouette up against the staircase. Actually, it reminded me of those scenes in Nosferatu where we get that kind of like skulking shadow with long claws up against the wall in silhouette. It was actually really a surprisingly neat visual for this movie that was otherwise shot very flat, lit very flat, like nothing interesting visually going on. It was surprising that they kind of did something kind of cool towards the end.
Totally.
Ooh.
And just.
Oh, you're breaking up weirdly.
Oh man, how about now?
Oh, you're better now. Yeah.
All right. I think I have everything off. Nothing should be downloading. But no, I totally agree. One really neat shot in a sea of just crap.
Oh, and I also thought that this character Steven, when they finally show him in full body, he's kind of like this grizzled, like long beard, long hair. You know what I thought? It reminded me of what Robin Williams looked like in Jumanji. After he came back from the jungle in the beginning, we got let out of the board game. So,
what year is this?
What year is it?
Yeah, so weird. I guess what would you give it out of 5?
It's got to be like a 1, maybe a 1.5 for some interesting. I mean, there's kind of like some interesting creative choices that seemed to just be dissolved in like you said, a sea of crap. I mean, the idea of having the main characters be, and arguably the main antagonists of the movie, having them be 2 old ladies who are seemingly non-imposing figures. I think that's kind of a cool creative choice that you might not see coming. And then a couple of interesting visuals at the end, but otherwise, I mean, it was a slog to get through for me, honestly. So maybe 1.5.
I would give it a 1.
Yeah,
I agree. I checked how much time was left in the movie a few times.
A couple times, yeah. I didn't do that at all with Joe, and I caught myself and actually noted it for myself. Oh, I did it once. I checked the runtime when they were still in the house in the beginning. I noticed that it was like a full third of the movie that we were still in their house watching them bicker, and I did it a couple times towards the end when they were, when Joyce was in bed, and it was definitely something I didn't do on Joe.
Exactly. And I agree. It's interesting that they chose to use older women for it. If they did something more, as opposed to just having them argue the entire time, the movie probably would have been better.
Mm-hmm.
But they squandered every opportunity to make this the cheapest film possible.
Oh, yeah. They definitely felt like they took a lot of shortcuts and like you said, squandered is a really great way to describe it, because it wasn't that the premise was bad. It wasn't that even the two lead actresses, they were actually really good, especially when Ellie was telling that story about her father. That was actually kind of, she sold it, and it was kind of sad. And they were clearly not phoning in their parts, but it was just too chatty, and they squandered those resources of a cool premise and decent acting.
Yep. So that was our first kind of pseudo canon horror movie. Very disappointing. We're still in the year 1970. Now, looking through the next films that I want to talk about, we're actually only going to go to 1971 for the next one. And It's another horror film. This one's called Crucible of Horror that we're going to do next. It is available on Amazon Prime. I didn't spoil it because I didn't read what the movie is about or anything like that, but I kind of wanted at least the next film to be a little bit better than this. Obviously, if Beast in the Cellar is 1 star, we need to have something that's at least 2 stars for the next one.
In the 2 to 3 star range, something to bring us up a little bit. We started off strong with Joe. Now we're in the gutter with Beast in the Cellar. Let's crawl out of the sewer a little bit.
So this one actually does have favorable reviews, and it stars Michael Goff, who, as we all know, is Alfred Pennyworth from the Tim Burton Batman films.
Oh, no kidding.
So we actually have an actor that we definitely know who's in it.
A recognizable face. Awesome.
And the byline for the film is the film tells the story of an English businessman who has for years and in various ways abused his wife and daughter. Eventually, they kill him. But he inexplicably comes back to life. So, hopefully this one's better. It can't be worse.
Yeah,
this is going to be...
Yeah, it's hard to. It would be hard to get worse, and it would be hard for it to be a movie that we would have as much trouble just getting through and watching the runtime, and it can only go from here.
I think after this one, we're going to skip a couple years, and we're going to go to Au Pair Girls, which is 1973, and then we're going to skip a couple more years, and we're going to go to Mako, The Jaws of Death, and then there's a couple in that 1977 to 1979 range that we definitely want to see, one of them being Gas Bump Girls, just because Joe Bob Briggs talked about it. And then after we get through 4 more films, we're finally going to hit the 1980s, and that's when we're going to go full steam ahead. This is Prime Canon.
Prime Canon. I mean, it's definitely been interesting to see. I mean, like you said, there hasn't been a whole lot of canon branding so far. I mean, it's clearly at this point in time with Beast in the Cellar and some of these other ones that you mentioned that we're going to be screening. These are just kind of things in a catalog for a distributor, and it was kind of canon wasn't really a brand at this point. It was just a business that kind of operated behind the scenes to bring presumably a lot of foreign films to, a U.S. market to make a buck. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I'm sure it's going to be jarring. I expect it to be jarring, the transition between, pre-80s canon to the canon that we're really familiar with all of the camp that comes with it.
If anything, because 1979 kind of ends the one canon era. Once you hit 1980s, in 1981, there's a movie called Enter the Ninja. 1982 is Death Wish 2. So we're definitely getting there. But yeah, I would say totally skip the Monster in the Cellar. It's not worth even a curious look, if you will.
No, not at all.
If you want to see what the beast looks like, skip to the last 10 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah, you think you're right. It was quick.
And then you'll be able to see them. But other than that, save yourself an hour and a half of 2 older British ladies yelling at each other.
Yeah, it's like you said, even out of morbid curiosity, definitely a skip for me too. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know about you. I mean, it wasn't funny bad at really any point. I mean,
it wasn't funny bad. It wasn't funny. It was boring. Which is tense, the most offensive thing that you can be in a film is boring. If you're going to be bad, be so bad that I laugh at it.
Exactly.
Don't be boring.
There were a handful of kind of awkward lines, and the part about the gun, her being so shocked that the gun was kind of funny. But really, it was boring. Like you said, that's the worst thing you could be is boring. And this movie was definitely boring. I mean, actually, this kind of reminds me of one question that I wanted to ask you and get your take on. Who do you think this movie was made for? Who was the audience that these filmmakers had in mind for this?
This is mom horror.
Okay,
if you had to coin a term, it's mom horror. It's okay. We're going to go to the Blockbuster or whatever they have in 1970s. We need to rent a movie for the weekend. Oh, look, it's a horror film, but it's not too scary because mom isn't going to get afraid of it.
Don't want to offend any delicate sensibilities.
Exactly. There's a phantom nipple, so the kid can get excited. Who knows is it man? Is it women? Who knows? It's a phantom nipple.
Use your imagination. And that's a really good point. Like, there's not enough gore and nudity for the kind of young crowd. And
Yeah.
that you and I were on the absolutely the same page because I had written down it's a monster movie for the retirement home.
Yes.
It's very light. It's not too tense. There's a lot of there's a lot of talking. It's very kind of it's not a roller coaster in any sense of the word. It's very kind of even tone, even excitement. Nothing, not a lot of highs, not a lot of lows. It's just kind of a way to pass the time, which I would argue it doesn't even do that.
Which, if it was a horror movie, it's a straight track. Or
Yeah.
no. If it wasn't a horror movie, if it was a roller coaster, it's a straight track.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no dip. It goes 5 miles per hour. It ends. It never even does a turnaround. It just ends.
Hmm.
You get off, and then it comes back by itself because we don't want you going backwards.
Oh, well, there's an hour and a half of my life that I won't ever get back.
Yeah,
I didn't need
mom
that.
horror. If they were aiming for the retirement community for horror, it really should be like you're out of pills, and like your heart medication. You need this every hour on the hour. That would be
MacGyver's
more
off the air.
tense. Exactly. That would get older people into it. Like, oh my god, he needs his heart medication. He's gonna die. And it shows like maybe the young corporal. They're like, okay, Corporal, I forgot what his name is, Corporal Winslow, you need to go across enemy lines to get the heart medication, then come back here to the retirement community where Joyce is going to die.
If you don't get that heart medication by sundown, Joyce is a goner.
And then
Coming to theaters this fall.
the corporal's like, I need food. And you see Ellie's just slaughtering tiny animals. I made you this pie. And
Oh my God, with real meat.
exactly. Then he gets to the end. He gets to where the pills are, and he's like, "Oh, the pills, they're in the cellar, but you got to be careful because like there's a beast in there."
They're special pills guarded by the beast in the cellar.
Exactly. And then he goes down and he caps him a couple times, and then he runs
Of course.
back and he gives Joyce the medication just in time to save her life. That
Plot twist: she takes the pills, and they turn her into another beast from the cellar.
oh man. Oh, I would watch that. That's like the perfect like B movie twist at the end of the movie. You're like, oh, this is so great. Oh my god, it got even better.
Oh my
She's
God.
like,
And then credits.
yep,
Freeze frame on the old lady transforming into a werewolf.
exactly. She puts the pill in her mouth, she drinks it, and then the corporal's kind of celebrating, and then it zooms in on her, and you can see her eyes like transform, and like maybe the hair grows a little bit longer.
Corporal starts backing away slowly.
Yeah,
To
and
the
then it
corner of the
freeze
room.
frames. It freeze frames on like a motion blur of him reaching for the gun, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
hear the beast in the cellar sound.
Credits.
Exactly, based on a
And
true story.
I feel like this is going to be a theme for a lot of these movies we watch is the most fun that we get out of it is A, talking about it, and B, fantasizing how it could have been made better, more exciting, or generally more entertaining.
This movie, you literally could have done anything more, and it would have been better.
Oh, yeah.
Even
any kind of
introducing
weird
like
creative choice.
aliens to the plot would have
Sure,
made it better.
aliens, throw
It
them in. Why not?
doesn't follow the theme, but it would have made it more exciting.
Yeah, literally put anything in the movie. And I almost feel like the kills that we did get, the couple in the barn and the guy on the bike, I got the impression that it was an editing choice, that the editor had gone through the movie and realized that he was probably 45 minutes into the movie and nothing exciting had happened. And even he who was, editing this horrible cash grab, boring movie, it's like, we got to put something in here. And he maybe like either they reshot that scene later because there were characters that we didn't know, and just we need to put something in here at this point in the movie. We needed like we need an action beat to break up this monotony because we've got otherwise an hour of sitting in an old British manor watching two old ladies bicker. That's all we've got.
Every 15 minutes, you need that rising action to come down. And he watched 40 minutes of a movie, and he's like, nothing is happening.
We've got nothing. Oh, shit.
He's like sweating. He's like, this is my first day on the job, and I got this pile of crap to edit. We need something more here.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it. That the editor, he got this pile of crap from the director and told to make something competent out of it, and he went and shot those kill scenes himself. He
Yes.
that was his prop eye popped out of the guy.
He's like his wife is at home and he's like shaving his chest. This nipple can't look male or female.
Got to get this past the censor board.
The wife is crying. You said you'd never do this again.
Literally anything to get this movie somewhat of a jump after 30 minutes of watching these old ladies talk with each other.
Oh,
That a valiant effort on the part of who we assume is the editor, but probably he was complicit in all this boringness.
yep. And usually this is the part where, we have some kind of fact, at least we did for Joe, about the movie, but there literally is nothing about this movie because of how bad it is. And sometimes some movies are so bad that they get a cult following. Sometimes movies are so bad that they're totally forgotten. And this one falls in the forgotten category.
Absolutely forgotten. I mean, that's what you can sort of see where that Digicom TV company comes in. I mean, I got the impression that this was a company, they fell ass backwards into a pile of like a film archive of old British movie and TV that they paid pennies on the dollar for, and just got this pile of trash. Like, what are we going to do with it? And they did kind of bare minimum scans of the film and threw it up on Amazon for a quick buck. And yeah, I mean, like I said, they probably bought this movie in a bulk package of a warehouse in the UK for nothing.
Okay, so I don't think you're that far off, because if you go to digicomtv.com,
Did you go to their website?
they
Great.
even advertise on Front Street, watch all our titles free Amazon Prime Video.
That's like
Which-
on their homepage that they're
Yes.
advertising. Okay. I mean, yeah, that fits.
If you look at it, it is a lot of British stuff. A lot of just British movies that probably no one would ever want to watch.
Just throwing them old movies up. I mean, I guess maybe that fits into the audience. Like, okay, maybe there's an audience out there of, people in an older generation who are just looking to kind of, watch some older movies, maybe things like this that are a little bit, from their generation that aren't too exciting. And they're just looking to put something on to, some white noise in the background. I mean, I could sort of see that being a niche for this, but even that feels like a stretch. Like you said, there's no cult following for this. There's no one apart from weirdos like us who are going back to watch this stuff with the intent of, oh, we're going to watch Beast in the Cellar. We're going to specifically watch that movie, aren't just like putting something on for noise in the background.
Exactly. I'm going to reach out to them and I'm going to ask them how, because they have a contact us button.
Do they really? Do it.
And there's probably, some poor, intern that has to monitor this. And I'm going to ask them, like, how did you guys buy these movies? I want to know how.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how you think that there's an intern. I like to believe that there's like it's one guy who bought all these movies, made the website himself, did all the scans himself, just because he got it for cheap. I love the idea of it being Mr. Digicom TV himself who's going to answer that email.
He's an older British guy. He's got like the silk white hair, and he's just sitting behind his computer going, I can't wait for someone to contact me, and so we can talk about classic old movies.
One day, and no one has ever touched that contact us button. It's gathering internet dust. You're going to be the first person to actually contact this guy.
They're on Twitter, and they have 2,589 followers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a shockingly large number for what I would consider to be an incredibly niche distribution company.
Super weird. Holy crap.
What does the website look like?
Okay, so you remember how when it started, it had the, the J.J. Abrams lens flare thing?
Yeah.
That's
like
what it has.
Like a cheesy stock effect.
Yep. It has that. It says Digicom TV and Partners. And then essentially it just says, watch all our movies on Amazon Prime. Contact us.
Please make this worth it.
Yeah.
I'm imagining like an old GeoCities website.
It does look like a GeoCities Angel Fire
fantastic.
type website. It's this is better than the movie.
I would say see, this is really telling. We're having probably a better time talking about this janky website and speculating about where they bought this movie in the pile of junk that they probably got a bunch of other similar movies in. That's more entertaining than the movie itself.
It's so odd that there is a company that goes out and buys crappy movies to show on streaming websites for free. How do they make money doing that? It almost seems like it's a complete loss, unless when we watched that movie, like maybe
some take goes to them, maybe some percentage, they get a view.
Maybe they go up to Amazon and they go, hey, we have 1,000 bad movies. We're going to give them to you for free under the stipulation that every time someone watches one of them, you give us $5.
Yeah.
And Amazon's probably going, we will never pay them anything.
But fine, sure.
But we'll get tons of content, and it'll just make, like, we can advertise that we have 50,000 movies.
Yep, that's actually a really good point. This is like the equivalent of the shovelware that a lot of like cheap games that were produced for the Wii and a lot of popular gaming consoles. We just want to build a game library. We want to build a movie library. We've got this many films, just to pad the catalog.
So odd. And yeah, I think at this point we're talking more about the website and Digicom TV than we have actually the real movie. Super weird.
Oh yeah. The one thing that I want to, and this is something I actually think would be fun to do for future episodes, is I want to pull a quote of the week. And because there was the one laugh out loud scene that I forgot about until I just read my note here about it, which was, "You forgot the celery. You know I can't eat cheese without celery."
Oh my God. Yes. Who eats cheese with celery? Who eats celery with cheese? Unless she's talking about blue cheese. Maybe they're making blue cheese.
I don't know, man. Maybe. Yeah. Like, it's not a pairing that I would think about at all. And it was the one kind of odd, funny, bad piece of dialogue from that whole scene in the beginning where they're making coffee and having a little lunch and talking about nothing. And this woman, Joyce, is getting irrationally, angry about putting groceries on the sitting room table, and she's, rifling around in the bag, and she lays this gem of a line on us. "You forgot the celery. You know I can't eat cheese without celery."
Awesome.
Mwah. Perfect. That is my quote of the week, folks.
I think at that point we can safely say, since we said it,
that's canon.
She is his wife. They are his prisoners, and they are all damned. Crucible of Horror.